So the cooperation, the Indo-Japanese cooperation was so important post-Bombay attacks because India suddenly wanted to modernize its policing, and Japan was willing to give loans at a very cheap rate for long-term loans, right? And you had this Japanese corporation called NEC. NEC is a major biometrics giant. It was NEC which was actually supplying India with biometric systems for Aadhaar. And NEC is the one which is also supplying us with facial recognition cameras. So you'll witness that all of these systems are very interlinked, they're very geopolitical. It's surveillance, it's also infrastructure, it's your entire development model. So it kind of made me question a lot of these systems and how they were being used, on how Hyderabad and how India itself was modernizing.
How important is digital rights for the city? Because it has been termed as one of the most surveilled cities in the world.
If you are asking me, is it a real politic issue? I would say it's not there yet, right? The conversations around it, people are angry. I mean, if you look at the Congress manifesto, the Congress is saying that we are going to shut down Telangana's land digitization portal, which is a digital issue. It's actually affecting people. It's affecting their land rights, land titles. It's a digitization issue. But are people really aware that it's a digital rights issue? No. And if you go back to their manifesto, they also say they're going to remove vehicle challans. What happened in Hyderabad, because of the million cameras that we have, is that all these cameras automatically issue traffic challans, right? And this impacts people who are on the street more, which is your auto drivers, cab drivers, Swiggy drivers, any form of drivers who are on the street continuously, right? And you are bound to violate some traffic rule or the other. So all of this automated offensive, right, where you're using technology to just issue them challans, has been really hard on them. In fact, the BJP into 2020 municipal elections for Hyderabad also said they're going to remove all the challans on auto drivers. We are witnessing same kind of demands from the political parties. But is it getting a tone of digital rights in that sense? Is it taking the tone of privacy? I won't say it's there yet. But you will witness that people are demanding these.
What is at stake for the city and the people in the city, especially people in from the marginalized suburbs of this city?
So if you look at a study that was recently carried out by Common Cause, which essentially interviewed people on what do they think about all of the surveillance CCTV cameras, right? A lot of the population in India, majority population, likes it. I mean, for women, this was told as women safety, right? A camera being out there is actually good for them. But are people questioning it? Yes. If you look at the recent IFLU protests, the English and Foreign Languages University protests in Hyderabad, you have students who are questioning, are the CCTVs even functioning? So at a certain level, there is a certain kind of understanding that these systems are systems of control and they're not necessarily safety systems. So uh, there are sections of the population who understand it, but the majority doesn't. When it comes to the minorities who are being subjected to extreme forms of policing practices, I think they understand it. But what's also happening is that you have done this so many times, and with most of your, let's say, social, economic, and political leaders promoting it, right? All sort of society. I'm not saying that the politicians supported it only, right? Your social actors also supported these forms of policing. Uh, Policing on women is also we are in a patriarchal society, right? So it's a social issue too. So in that sense, it's been normalized. So a million cameras is actually a good thing. And if you look at the claims of the BRS party, which is going to elections and saying that we have done so much policing and all the buildings that they show, the policing infrastructure is actually great for the city, right? When you look at from an economic perspective, all of this policing gave an economic order. It ensured there are no protests, no sort of rallies, Rasta Rokos, nothing, right? It ensured that your population always was working for your companies. It ensured there were no disruptions of your economic engine. So, in that sense, it's seen as a good thing. In fact, their advertising in the last 10 years, there has been no communal riots of any kind. So one of the things that the BRS party is saying is that if Congress comes back, there could be political riots too, and that they have been holding the city so well in terms of policing that nobody was allowed to protest. Neither was Raja Singh, nor were protesters are allowed to protest for Palestine, for example. Right? So no forms of protests are allowed. And I would say it's largely because of our economic nature of the city, but also social factors and political factors in the play. When you look at all of these systems from the lens of privacy, from the lens of the fundamental right to privacy, right? If you take them to a court, a constitutional court in its right mind would shut all of this down, right? But we also must understand that the fundamental right to privacy judgment, the judges themselves say that privacy is not anonymity or secrecy, and it has provisions, exceptions for national security and other public interest issues, right? So, but the question though is how do you implement them? You have to do it in a very minimal way. But what we are witnessing in Hyderabad is mass surveillance. It's like everybody is under surveillance, right? But the effects of it are seen more with the marginalized communities. I'm not saying that only the marginalized communities are under surveillance. It's everywhere. So you can't say that only one community is being surveilled. But when you talk about exercising rights, people have no option to exercise it. Like in the past, like way early, before the Supreme Court actually recognized fundamental right to privacy, people approached courts in Hyderabad in 2014, 2015. Right to privacy was recognized in 2018, 2017. So the courts did not give us any relief. People who approached saying ordnance searches were illegal because of procedural issues, they were never really looked into. So if a serious challenge is mounted in the courts on this, all of this system will collapse. But within our political economy, within how politicians and political parties are letting this happen, it's really hard for us to navigate this. We're also in that phase where we're looking at very powerful parties, where power is centralized. Even in Telangana, we are almost a single party state, right? For the last whole decade, we pretty much didn't have any opposition. Congress had 6 seats, or even if they win seats, the BRS party would just take them over. So you must understand from a very political economy lens, practicing your rights is a challenge because there's so much support for it. So the law itself, the data protection law that has come out, in itself is bad because we know that the BJP benefits from surveillance, from spyware. We know that leaders in Telangana also benefit from all of this, right? So it's going to be hard to negotiate this. It's going to be a continuous fight because this infrastructure is not going to suddenly vanish, even if, say, BRS loses this election. If Congress comes to power, they are going to equally use this infrastructure against their opposition. That's how these systems function.
There was an investigation by Amnesty which says that India is using the spyware from, it was a tech company from Hyderabad, and they used it in a African country. What do you see? Like, how do you see about the surveillance technology going out and India outsourcing this to other countries?
So let's go back a bit into history before Pegasus was known to the public, right? The first time we started actively talking about any sort of malware and spyware was with the case of Bhima Koregaon. And in the case of Bhima Koregaon, if you look at the order on how things order of events, it was Varavar Rao getting an email or Varavar Rao writing an email about this threat to the Prime Minister. And it's been concluded by many private investigators that this email was planted on Varavara Rao, right? And then we see the Pune police suddenly landing into Hyderabad and arresting Varavara Rao and taking him to Pune with the Bhima Koregaon issue. You in India, a different state police doesn't just come to your state without the cooperation of your state police and just take people away. Okay, and Varavara Rao was one of the people who was actively part of Telangana movement. He was with KCR, walking with KCR during the Telangana movement, right? Now, there was a certain form of spyware which was planted onto him. And this happened much before the Bhima Koregaon incident. It was not that because Bhima Koregaon was going to happen, there was spyware on him, right? So who planted the spyware on Varavara? Was it Telangana police? Was it the Pune police, Maharashtra police? Or was it like a central agency, right? We need to understand that at a certain level, the policing might be a state subject, but it's actually very centralized. You have like your intelligence agencies, which are off the record, right? They don't follow any form of rules and laws. But even from a legal aspect, we have the IT Act, and under the IT Act, Section 79 of the IT Act, I believe, has 10 agencies which are authorized to use some form of spyware. Where the section itself doesn't say you're authorized to use spyware. You're authorized to break encryption. That's the provision that the IT Act gives. And it gives it to a host of agencies, including the Income Tax Department, the ED, the CBI, the military signals, and the 10 such agencies. But what also happens is that your state police are also using it. And Telangana is one of those states with a lot of money. If you look at our policing infrastructure, was our police also using spyware? From the Pegasus reports, from all the investigations that went into Pegasus, we can conclude that there were different state police authorities who were also using it on their opposition. While our own politicians like KTR or Asaduddin Owaisi are being monitored by central agencies, we had state police departments also doing the same with the local opposition, right? So it's one can't conclude whether if it's entirely one department with so many different agencies involved. It's very much, they know who's doing what. They all know each other, right? Like if Telangana police is doing it, and if Varavara was sent over to Pune police, handed over to the Pune police, it's because they cooperated, right? So in that sense, the practices that are emerging from Hyderabad are very interlinked nationally and internationally.
How big is this industry, and how dangerous is this industry of spyware?
Okay, so there was this conference that the Telangana police was promoting. It's called Digipol. Okay, it was, I think, this conference was held in Hyderabad twice, like probably in 2019 and 2022. Okay, so it was being sponsored by the Telangana police. Justice B.N. Sri Krishna was a guest of honor at the event, but it was an event only allowed for law enforcement agencies. I can't go attend this event. But if you go look at the website of the event, the organizations who were at the event, they were all defense organizations, and they were all these private organizations from Israel, from Europe, from US, who were trying to sell different forms of surveillance technologies. And you see that all of these, the entire industry was in Hyderabad, and it was the Hyderabad Telangana police which was promoting all of them or giving them the space to grow. We also have to understand from a very geographical point of view, Hyderabad is unique because we also have a police academy here. The Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy is here, right? It's not that the setup is in its isolation. Modernization of policing is happening here because in the curve of development, we are much ahead from the north or the northeast, right? Like if you look at south, and within the south, Hyderabad is much ahead because of what we did in 90s and how the political economy then allowed us to spend more and follow the market economy model, which is what we have done in the last 10 years to under BRS. the concerns around surveillance have always existed, going back to emergency, for example, right? The opposition was always monitored by surveillance agencies. It was telephone before, and even before that, it was telegraph, it was post. Surveillance was always there, right? Uh, but if you look at different societies, like take the US, when Pegasus happened, it was being called India's Watergate moment. When Watergate happened in US, when Nixon used his surveillance agencies on the opposition, people fought back. Then US essentially tried to control its surveillance agencies by getting the US Senate Intelligence Committee, and that only happened after Nixon resigned, after there was a new government that came up, right? So if you're talking about regulation, if you're talking about controlling all of this entire intelligence agencies, if you're talking about policing reforms or surveillance reforms, it won't happen magically. Until there is a government change, this is not going to happen. Even after there is a government change, we are unsure. Like if you look at history, it's not like the BJP started this. We know police reforms were initiated under the Congress post Bombay attacks. Modernization of policing itself was something that the Indian state wants, right? Irrespective of political parties, there is an administrative mechanism at play which continues to function the way it is, irrespective of who's in power. So you can have some form of oversight at best. Surveillance in itself won't end. What you can have is that surveillance is not being carried out extensively, it's not being carried out on the wrong people, and it's lawful and there is oversight. At best, that's what you're gonna get. But even that is very unlikely in the current political climate.